It's only been a week, but the more I play Yixuan, the more ways I find to optimize her. And it may surprise you to hear that a lot of the simpler combos may be better than the more complex ones. In case you aren't aware, I had a pre-release video on Yixuan combos, which covered how to get the most out of her for the instant period. But now that we're past release, I've had a lot more time to play around with the character. It turns out that I came across a change between the creator server and the live server completely by accident that wasn't documented anywhere. And this changes everything. Well, not everything, but significant parts of her most optimal combo routes, like the double Auric combo. There was also a lot of confusion on how to adapt the combos in that video for Astra teams, specifically those which made use of the ultimate animation cancel, or chain trigger attack as it's often called. So let's go over all of the most up-to-date Yixuan combos for both premium and free-to-play teams that will elevate your play to the next level. Before we start though, I should mention that the combos here build upon concepts explained on the original combo guide. See this as a sequel to that video. So if you're coming across something you don't understand, like what the ultimate animation cancel or chain trigger attack even is, I'd recommend checking that video out as it goes through the fundamental concepts behind these combos. And do check the pinned comment on this video for any updates or discoveries I come across in the future. Without further ado, let's have a detailed look at these newly optimized Yixuan combos. Actually, before we get into how these combos work, you should probably understand what I'm referring to when I say individual skill names, so treat this as a sort of visual glossary. Technique points refers to Yixuan's special gauge, which is filled whenever you spend adrenaline on skills. Cloud Shaper is a ball attack that you get by holding down the basic attack button when Yixuan has adrenaline. Ashen Ink is the explosion at the very start and at the very end of this attack. It may look like it's part of Cloud Shaper, but it's actually a separate skill and can be interrupted. Ink Manifestation is the wing attack that you get by tapping or holding down the special button when Yixuan has adrenaline. It can be uncharged if let go early, or charged if you either get a parry or wait long enough. Celestial Cloud Blitz Break is a spin and slide attack that you get by tapping the special button after using Ink Manifestation. Qingming Eruption is the attack where Yixuan ascends and spreads her wings, which you get by tapping the special button when Yixuan has enough adrenaline after Celestial Cloud Blitz Break. The Ink Manifestation string is all of the previous three together, so Ink Manifestation, then Celestial Cloud Blitz Break, and finally Qingming Eruption. Veil Cloud Coalescence is the ink field that you get by holding down the dodge button. While Auric Array is the same field where clones spawn around Yixuan, which you also get by holding down the dodge button, but only when you have an Auric ink point in stock. You know you have one when the yin-yang symbol on Yixuan's gauge is orange. And you get this by using her Endless Talisman Suppression ultimate, which is unlocked when her technique points are maxed out. Lastly, Yixuan's standard ultimate is Qingming Skyshade, which works like a regular ultimate and uses up 3000 decibels for its casting. Now that we got that out of the way, let's go into the actual combo breakdowns. Yixuan has the ability to shortcut to Auric Array after her ultimates. This is very handy as you get to save time by skipping the dodge animation Yixuan has to do before its activation. This is something I just didn't pick up on. Not doing so is my bad, and I apologize for that. Even if you start Cloud Shaper at 99 on the base bar, the virtue of being able to skip Auric Array startup means you get a lot more time to channel Cloud Shapers on a standard combo. It does shift the adrenaline regen to the end, which can make its setup more difficult, but it's undeniably going to do more damage than wasting time in dodge animations. You do still need to cancel Auric Array, but you can do so with a regular dodge into Cloud Shaper, which is faster than the dash back and forwards from a neutral cast while also contributing a bit of damage. The same logic applies to the double ultimate combo. Since we do two ultimates back to back, you can spend more time on Cloud Shapers and let Auric Array tick during Qingming Skyshade instead. This could lead to some issues with the double Auric combo. Because there was so little time after the ultimate at the end, this meant parts of Auric Array wouldn't be landing in stun. Thankfully, it's an easy fix, as if we shorten the channel time on the second Cloud Shaper, that'd give us more time at the end for the third. So long as we fit 3 Cloud Shapers in anyways, the total channel time would end up being the same, so there's no damage loss. In fact, this is optimal for every combo that has a late ultimate. Why spend time channeling the first or second Cloud Shapers on a double ultimate combo when you can get an extra Cloud Shaper and spend that channel time at the end instead? Why waste time and resources fitting in more damage before the crit damage buff from her ultimate, when we can instead still get the same channeling time overall, but have more of it benefit from the buff? So again, my bad. Although this is very much an on-paper optimization. In practice, before M1, my rotations didn't generate enough technique points in time if the second Cloud Shaper ended early. With adrenaline generation buffs and Deadly Assault and better routing, this may not be an issue, but these aren't changes. This is just thinking up better ways of integrating with Yixuan's mechanics. What is a change is that on live, you can now do Auric Array out of Qingming Eruption. If we go through the description of her reacts that I had from the creator server, you see that it specifies that you only get the Auric Array shortcut after Celestial Cloud Blitz Break. This isn't good. Although Celestial Cloud Blitz Break had 741% in motion value, it's really slow, and it meant you had to skip on the 853% from the Qingming Eruption finisher if you wanted to do the Auric shortcut. Maybe you could try to make up for this loss by getting a charged ink manifestation and stun, but most of the motion value from it is on the wing attack. The charge follow-up is less than half as strong, and what initiates the stun is the final hit of the wing strike, which means you get no stun damage bonus applied to it. So unless the enemy was stunned before you even began charging, you'd be losing out on a fair amount of damage and only really get Celestial Cloud Blitz Break to benefit from the stun damage bonus. Having the enemy already being stunned before you start to do a charged ink manifestation would take far too long. Skipping Auric Array's dodge animation just wouldn't make up for it. But on live servers, I accidentally stumbled upon the fact that I could do it after Qingming Eruption, not Celestial Cloud Blitz Break. Check the description and sure enough it's different. You can no longer shortcut from Celestial Cloud Blitz Break, and instead it's being shifted to Qingming Eruption. If you try it, it's not possible to shortcut after Celestial Cloud Blitz Break. This changes the calculus entirely. Qingming Eruption has a motion value of 853%, and takes about 3/4 of a second to cast in full. As you can swap out as soon as Auric Array begins casting, there's zero time loss to be had. Whereas it takes well over a second even for an instant Ashen Ink into Auric Array, which would be just a little more than 234% in motion value, with a minor amount of channeling time. You may point out that Ashen Ink is 468% in motion value, not 234, but note how it refers to both appears and contracts. When you actually break down the damage numbers, it's half at the start and half at the end. So every combo that starts with Cloud Shaper is actually missing out on half the motion value from Ashen Ink landing out of stun at the start. Yet it still turned out to be better to open with Cloud Shaper. When there was no Auric Array shortcut after Qingming Eruption, if you tried doing it with your opener, it'd take up far too much time. Never mind getting 3 Cloud Shapers, I couldn't even get the ultimate to land. But since we can now shortcut straight into Auric Array from Qingming Eruption, we don't need to spend precious stun time on the lengthy Celestial Cloud Blitz Break. The time save from only needing to slot in Qingming Eruption and stun, as well as skipping the dodge animation, combined with the Cloud Shaper optimizations previously mentioned, means that the Ink Manifestation opener actually has viable use on a double Auric combo. It's such a strong option that it now allows even free-to-play teams to be able to make use of these combos. With this new knowledge in mind, let's go through the combo once again. You will want to apply Astra Voice to Yixuan before the combo begins. Thankfully, Pan makes this easy. We're opening with Ink Manifestation, but that doesn't mean we get to avoid complex manual chain inputs. You hold the X for a charged Ink Manifestation, release it for it to be unleashed, and then hold again. From here, you can keep holding until Yixuan automatically transitions into Celestial Cloud Blitz Break. You want to hold Special and not Basic, because if you do, Cloud Shaper will interrupt the transition between Ink Manifestation and Celestial Cloud Blitz Break. Once Yixuan begins using Celestial Cloud Blitz Break though, you want to stop holding the Special button. If you keep holding it, Yixuan will not go into Qingming Eruption, and instead will go back to Ink Manifestation. Hold both the basic attack button and the dodge button while mashing the Special button, as Cloud Shaper cannot interrupt the transition to Qingming Eruption. Once Qingming Eruption begins casting, you want to stop mashing Special so it doesn't take priority over Auric Array. If you've executed everything correctly, Yixuan will trigger no chains and go straight into Auric Array after Qingming Eruption. From there, it's swapped to another character to trigger the chain. So to recap the inputs, hold Special until Ink Manifestation is charged, release, then hold again. When Celestial Cloud Blitz Break starts, stop holding Special and start mashing it instead, while at the same time holding both basic and dodge buttons. Then, once Qingming Eruption begins, let go of Special but keep holding basic and dodge. Once Auric Array begins, you're free to swap out and do what you will. The rest of the combo follows broadly the same strokes, but making use of the optimizations from before. Yixuan chain into Cloud Shaper, but instead of holding, we let go straight away. This is to shorten or pre-automate Cloud Shapers, but there is more to it. Once you start Cloud Shaper, Yixuan will always channel it for a short while, even if you swap out of it. So if you don't have Astra's Quick Assist or an ultimate to provide a quick chain trigger, holding Cloud Shaper into a swap cancel means there's a gap where Yixuan is not doing any damage. Whereas if you cast an instant swap, it gives you just enough time to land something like a Pan or Pokra EX without losing any Yixuan uptime. In this combo, I use Pokra EX to refresh King of the Summit, as I didn't apply it before the stun. But if you have, then using Pan's EX or even just regular specials work too. Once you've triggered a chain, it's back to Yixuan. Since we're going to be using the ultimate Auric shortcut, there's no need to time a dodge input after the chain attack. So you can go straight into Talisman Suppression. As it's just about to end, buffer a dodge input to go into Auric Array, then interrupt it with Qingming Skyshade. If you've executed everything correctly, you should now have enough time to land one final Cloud Shaper before the stun ends. If you have Astra, then it's even better. The opener is the same, Ink Manifestation, Celestial Cloud Blitz Break, Qingming Eruption, and Auric Array into Yixuan Chain. From here, things change a little. Rather than doing the instant swap cancel out of Cloud Shaper, we want to stay on Yixuan and instead use a Talisman Suppression Ultimate just before the explosion hits. It's just the Ultimate Animation Cancel, also known as Chain Trigger Tag, but instead of doing it at the end, we do it at the start. That should cause a chain trigger halfway during the Talisman Ultimate animation, which lets us swap to Astra via her chain. Then use Astra's Ultimate into a Quick Assist chain attack onto Yixuan. Since we've used the Ultimate before the chain, it gets buffed. After which, it's straight into Qingming Skyshade. Once that's done, Auric Array. As we don't have any more ultimates to interrupt it, we'll dash cancel it into a Cloud Shaper. And that's the combo. I should point out that where you are on the days bar matters a fair bit for these. This all assumes you're landing Ink Manifestation at under 97 on the days bar, so that Celestial Cloud Blitz Break is what initiates the stun. Any more and it'll be Ink Manifestation that starts it. The manual chain inputs I've shared should have us covered if this happens, but it does mean a little damage loss. I'll have some calcs here on the side, but in summary, even if it happens, it's not too bad, as you're gaining 299% motion value from the Charged Ink Manifestation, as well as 741% from Celestial Cloud Blitz Break being in stun. It does mean you're losing out on stun time. For the Astra variant, some of the Auric Array will spill out of the stun period, and you need to replace a Cloud Shaper at the end with a Charged Ink Manifestation instead. The force channeling that happens on Cloud Shaper means it won't fit, so Ink Manifestation it is. Even with this, the damage difference really isn't that great. We're talking a few 100% in motion value, maybe even double digits depending on execution, so I wouldn't sweat it. As for the standard version, it still plays out the same, just with a little less channeling time on Cloud Shaper, so it really doesn't matter much. To be fair, most of your combos will likely be an in-between, as aftershocks or lingering attacks can activate the stun halfway through Celestial Cloud Blitz Break. It's mostly just making sure your manual chain inputs are fine, and that you're adjusting the finisher depending on the stun time you have left. Opener aside, there's a reason Astra has her own variant, but if you don't have Astra, or you do and Astra's Ultimate is on cooldown, then the damage difference between the standard combo and the Astra variant isn't all that big. Astra provides one Astra chain and Ultimate's worth of damage, while also making sure that Yixuan's chain is buffed by her own crit damage buff, as it happens after the Ultimate. But it also means you lose a teammate's EX worth of damage, potentially leading to King of the Summit fall off, and some channeling time on Cloud Shaper. So although the combo with Astra's Ultimate is better, don't think that you're missing out on much. And with that, we've covered the new optimized double Auric combos, which is likely the most damage you can get with each one in a stun. But just because it's the most damage on paper, doesn't make it the most optimal combo in practice. Instead, I'd give that title to the early chain burst combos. The early chain burst and its Astra variant are some of the simplest in terms of skill routing. Not only is it compatible with auto chain and way less strict when it comes to day setups, it's also going to be your best option most of the time. This is because unless you can set things up perfectly every time, the flexibility and resource management this combo offers makes it the most consistent. Double Auric is just really tight. With Astral Voice only lasting 15 seconds and no opportunity to refresh it mid-combo, this means it has really strict quick assist timing. And no stunner chains means no King of the Summit, so you also need to use a stunner EX just before or halfway through the combo to maintain uptime. But more important than the combo damage and buff uptimes is that over the course of a long Deadly Assault run, or any shield defense where you can't one turn, managing stunner and support ultimates gets pretty important. Certainly a lot more than getting marginal motion value gains in a stun. I recently posted a kill of Unknown Corruption Complex with a Yixuan, Trigger, and Astra team, and I found that I needed to use triple chains, or at the very least stunner chains, to sustain the decibel requirement to get enough stuns in the fight. Although the more complex combos are going to do more damage, my experience over the past week has shown that the best combos are not the ones that hit the hardest, but the ones that allow for better routing. To be honest, without extra bonuses like Yixuan's M1, or the current Deadly Assault buff which increases adrenaline generation, you're going to struggle to get enough technique points to double Auric. And the early chain burst hits pretty hard too. Getting Yixuan's crit damage buff at the very start of the combo means it's really strong, especially if you're still building Yixuan and your crit damage bonus isn't saturated. All in all, the early chain burst combos and its variants are just the safest bet. Maybe with a Pan Astra team or a Nicole Astra team, double Auric combos may be viable, because it takes so long to stun that you get enough technique points for an ultimate early, and still get to build it back up in time. But if you're running a stunner like Trigger, Pokra, or Fufu, it's unlikely that you have enough time to build technique points and adrenaline to sustain it. You might not even be able to build enough technique points and adrenaline for just one Talisman ultimate on your next stun combo. Which means that although double Auric combos may be the most damage on paper, especially after the Auric Array shortcut optimizations, in practice only specific teams can make use of them, as otherwise it just won't line up correctly for your rotation. It's better to fall back on the early chain burst as an easy way to line up resources and still do good damage. Well, I say easy, but it does have a technical component. The chain trick attack that we use to cancel out of Yixuan's ultimate animation lock. That's really the only difficult part of it though. Like with the double Auric, you will want to quick assist to Yixuan just before the combo begins to apply Astral Voice. The opener is as with the old combos, just Cloud Shaper. Once it's nearly fully cast, release and use a Talisman ultimate into the chain trick attack. No manual chain or weird inputs required. Who you chain with, how long you wait, and how many times you chain will depend on your comp, as if you chain back to Yixuan too early, you interrupt the explosion from her ultimate. If you're running Pokra and Pan for example, you could use Pan's chain attack, and that almost perfectly syncs up with the time it takes for Yixuan to land her ultimate in full. So you want to chain straight back to Yixuan and not waste any time. But Pan's chain isn't particularly good, and you'd likely be better off using it on a stunner for Decibels or King of the Summit, like Pokra. Do keep in mind her chain is very fast, which means that if you were to chain straight back to Yixuan, you'd lose out on her ultimate explosion damage. Going to Pan's chain from Pokra would take far too long, so it isn't worth it. So the best route for this team would be a chain to Pokra, cancel the chain, wait a bit to make sure we aren't interrupting Yixuan, then use the quick assist that she provides to go to Pan, who then triggers a chain. These are adaptations that you have to do on every comp. If you're using Trigger on Astra for example, Trigger suffers from the same issue Astra has of having a quick chain. Put them together though and you could do Trigger into Astra chain and end on Yixuan, getting Decibels from triple chains, full ultimate damage, and no real time loss. On the other hand, take a character like Fufu and her chain is just a little too fast. So instead of chaining quickly, it's better for you to stay on the chain select menu for as long as you can, as that way it buys enough time for the ultimate to land. In fact, you can even see the enemies flinch halfway during the chain select menu. That's as much confirmation as you need that you waited long enough. After using Yixuan's chain, just go straight into her Qingming Skyshade ultimate, and from there, we make use of the Auric Array shortcut. Like with the chains, what you do here depends on your comp. If you're running Pan for example, this is the perfect opportunity to swap to him for an ultimate and EX, both refreshing his buff and Astral Voice on Yixuan. If you're running Astra, you can go into her ultimate and then transition into Yixuan's chain attack. Just keep in mind that if you're using Auric Array, you either need to stay on Yixuan and dash cancel it, or have a character with a quick assist, as if you swap out, you'll be locked out of swapping back to Yixuan until she's done. However you choose to handle it, once you're done with Auric Array, just channel Cloud Shaper for as long as you can. And that's the combo. Depending on how much channel time you got on the opener Cloud Shaper, or if you skip Auric Array and stun, just one full Cloud Shaper may not be enough. In which case, just end it a little early so that you have time to fit 2 of them. Be wary that this can be quite adrenaline intensive if you don't use Auric Array, so watch your resources when going into the stun and during Cloud Shaper casts. There are a few extra things I'd like to shout out that are more about the out of stun period rather than the in-stun combos. Yixuan is a character that's very resource intensive, so managing both adrenaline and technique points can get difficult. One of the bonuses she has is that she can recover 5 adrenaline on a perfect dodge, with a 1 second cooldown. She also gets 10 adrenaline refunded when she successfully parries with her Ink Manifestation. You may think that you can't dodge counter on Yixuan and do Ink Manifestation at the same time. And you're right, you can't. But you don't need to dodge counter, you just need to perfect dodge. So although you can't interrupt Yixuan's dodge counter with Ink Manifestation, you can go from a perfect dodge straight into it, which means you get both the 5 adrenaline bonus from her perfect dodge and the adrenaline refund from a parry. You will want to reserve this for multi-hit attacks though, as without a lingering hitbox you won't have the time to do it. Better than dodges though are evasive assists, and when a character goes into Vital View, they take no damage and slow down time. If you swap to other characters during Vital View, they also won't take damage from that attack. But the hitbox is still there. If you go into Vital View, but then time Yixuan's Ink Manifestation parry to happen just as Vital View expires, that means you can still get a parry off the attack despite having already perfect assisted, which makes for a highly effective way of building technique points, and you get to look incredibly stylish while doing it. But if you perfect assist while Yixuan is in an EX special animation, she won't get the lightning bolt on perfect assists that restores adrenaline. So you're better off doing a dodge counter assist deck and then making use of the Vital View parry to better manage your adrenaline use. Vital View is good for more than just parries though. If you pay attention to the description of Auric Array, you notice that it's also a way of triggering the Vital View state. Sure enough, if you try using Auric Array on the field, everything gets slowed down while Yixuan is casting it. But combo assist doesn't do much. Vital View doesn't give you more stun time, nor does it make the in-game clock tick slower. But that doesn't mean that it can't interact with boss mechanics. When fighting Miasma Priest, one of the most important parts of the rotation is to be able to skip the Miasma phase after the first stun. I'll spare you the breakdown of her moves, just know that if you're stunning her quickly enough, she'll likely go into her Purple Clock Onslaught attack right after the first stun burst. After that, she will always go into the Miasma phase. Given we've just parried a bunch of attacks and unloaded ultimates, there's no way we're going to break the Miasma shield before she hits 99 days. Which means we want to stun her before she activates it. We do get a bit of time to unload, as after we've parried all of her Purple Onslaught attacks, she will be impaired and do a whole lot of nothing. This is where Vital View comes in. Normally, we can only get Vital View through enemy attacks. Even Yixuan's Vital View on her Cloud Shaper only triggers if it's used as a counter. Auric Array is the one way to access it freely. Maybe Vital View doesn't stop the in-game clock, but it does slow down enemies, and that includes Miasma Priest's Languid phase, which means more time to build days and a much easier method at skipping the Miasma phase. This does mean changing combos a little, as instead of using Auric Array in the stun period, we want to pocket it for after. So a quick swap Cloud Shaper can fill in the gap here, doing decent enough damage and still allowing for Pan EX or Astra Ultimate with only marginal losses. And it's because of things like this that I encourage you not to take these combos at face value, but see how to integrate the logic behind them into rotations. Making use of the double Auric or even the early chain burst is great, but with Auric Array having Vital View, it may be better to use it as a way to skip mechanics. You don't need to double Auric to make use of the Auric Array shortcuts. Since we've already established that shorter Cloud Shapers are better early on, there's nothing stopping you from doing the first few combos from the original video, but making them auto-chain compatible by shifting the Auric Array to the end of the combo after ultimates. And the Adrenaline Regen and early Talisman Ultimate from Yixuan's M1 could make double Auric combos viable, even if running with stunners. As for M2, well, that adds a whole new skill follow-up and stun extension, which can change how you tailor your rotation. But we've already covered more than enough for today. If you want to be notified when I release a video on these Mindscape combos, are looking for more detailed coverage of niche character tech, or you're just interested in breakdowns of fundamental game mechanics, then do like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell. I've got more videos coming. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.